You know, in all of the gear and tech content that I produce on this channel and, well, technically anywhere else, I have two basic rules. Number one is that anything I review, I use, and most of the time I use them extensively. And number two is I avoid using this one word, except for very special products. What is that word? Best. I avoid using the word best because reviews are of course based on opinion and experience. However, there is one product, at least in recent memory, that actually made me break this rule. And this is it. It might not look like much, but I think at least for now, this is the best pen display we have in the market. This is the Wacom Movink 13 pen display, and well, let's talk about it. Now, I think it's safe to say that I've reviewed at least a dozen pen tablets and pen displays across 5 different brands in the last couple of years. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's a lot. And that's also why there have been some products that have been underwhelming for me. There have been packages that arrived that didn't really excite me. Now, when Wacom sent this over, I was honestly surprised and actually a bit alarmed. Why? Well, for one, it came in a very small box. It came in a very light package that I actually thought it was somehow stolen and I received an empty box. Now, when I finally got to open the box, it became actually a pleasant surprise. Because what was inside the box? Well, technically it's this cable. It's a USB-C to USB-C cable. I also appreciate that it is L-type. And this pen. This pen has 3 buttons. It doesn't have any batteries. And if you take this out, it reveals the extra nibs. There are 3 extra nibs here. And the only other thing inside the box was this. A 4mm thick pen display. That is just 420 grams. It's lighter than the scale that I use to measure the weight. Physically, it was already a pleasant surprise. Now, the whole thing is 12.6 by 8.1 inches, and the active area is just a little bit smaller than that. It's a 13.3 inch diagonal slate. And again, it's 4 millimeters thin. Now, the functional surface is housed in what I think is anti-glare glass, and there are just 2 physical buttons, one on the right and one on the left, as well as 2 USB-C ports, one on the right and one on the left that can be used interchangeably. In addition, there's one touch button here on the upper right and another one here on the upper left that you can use to navigate the on-screen display. At the same time, you can also program these for functional shortcuts. Now, one of the reasons why I actually got very excited about this is because of the convenience. I mean, this is the only cable you need. This is where the power comes from, and this is also the back and forth of the touch information, the pen input information, and also the display information. And you can use it either on the left or on the right side. So literally setting it up would be plugging it into your computer and plugging the other end of the cable on the display. And yes, for this video, I pulled out my Mac Mini M4 from my desk to show you the size in comparison to the tablet, or maybe the other way around, the size of the tablet in comparison to the Mac Mini M4. So yes, going back, physically setting it up is just plugging in the cable on your preferred side of the pen display. Now, after plugging it in, it is already functional. It's already going to display your default settings. And if you have turned on the touch feature, then you can already use it for that. However, if you want to maximize the features, then you of course need to download the driver from the website of Wacom and install that, and you will have this. Now, for the setup, the goal is to of course assign the buttons on the pen. There are 3 buttons on this pen, and at the same time also set up the on-screen shortcut. As you can see, there are no physical shortcut buttons, and the reason behind that is because you can have all of that on the screen anyway. So to assign the features on the pen, you click on this. It says Pro Pen, and for this one, I'm going to set up what I use on Adobe Photoshop. I've actually already done that. The first button would be my shortcut for brush tools. The next one would be a keyboard shortcut for the space bar to help me navigate, but I can also do this using the touch gestures. And the most proximal button would be my shortcut for a radial menu. Now the radial menu, what does that do? It will basically give me all of these buttons or all of these features that I would use: the remove tool, the spot healing tool, the marquee tool, a shortcut for the command button when I use that for sampling, an undo button, and a save button. The other two I didn't really even bother because I think all of the tools that I use are already on this radial menu. So it's as easy as pressing this button with the pen in proximity of the display, and that's going to pull it right out. Now, other things to set up would be the express keys. That would be these two right here. This is set up for power and menu, and this is set up to turn the touch functions on and off. So if I press this, the touch function will be off. There is no input coming from my fingers, obviously. And if I press that again, it's going to turn it on and I can now navigate using my fingers. You can, of course, interchange all of these as well. Now, the touch buttons on the top surface can also be used. This one on the left will be for the pen display modifications or the modifiers. And this one on the right will pull up the pen display menu right here, and I can use that with my fingers as well. Other things that can be set up would be the touch gestures. Of course, right now it's turned on, so that's basically the setup we needed for that. The basic gestures would be to scroll, to zoom in, and to navigate around the frame. And the advanced gestures are basically kind of using the touchscreen as your trackpad if you're using a Mac or even a Windows actually. The same shortcuts or the same gestures apply. Now we also have the display settings right here and the display toggle for when you're using multiple displays, especially if you're using this on a laptop. Now with that, the last thing you have to do is, of course, to set up all the on-screen shortcuts that you want to use. I already showed you what I would use for that. And for me, this is basically it because the tools that I use on Photoshop are all these. You can, of course, have other radial menus. For example, the express menu that applies to the general functions right here. Another one right here for navigation. And other kinds of shortcuts that I honestly have not used for myself because what I've set up for this is actually already enough for my use. Now let's talk about the screen. First thing I want to do is remind you that this is very small and very thin and very light. It's again 4 millimeters in 420 grams. The one worry I had when I got this is that will it break inside my bag? Because I would want to use this with my laptop and I would want to use this when I do my editing elsewhere. And so I put it inside the very thin cloth covering it had, and I put it inside the laptop sleeve of my bag alongside the laptop, and so far we're good. It's been with me for about 2 weeks, I think, and I have no problem with it. More than that, the things you need to know about the screen, again, it's 13.3 inches diagonally. It's not 4K, it's full HD because it's 13 inches. I don't think we need to have 4K resolution on this one, although I'm not sure if having it at 2.5K would be better. Probably not. I think in terms of pixel density, we're good at full HD for a 13.3 inch display. If there is going to be a bigger version of this, I would love to see a 19 inch 4K version, although I'm pretty sure the price would also be very different from this one. So yes, it's 1920 by 1080p at 60 Hertz. There are options for lower resolution, but why, right? Now, one thing I think I need to highlight more is the fact that this is not IPS. This is an OLED panel, and that actually has a lot of implications. Number one, this covers 100% of DCI-P3 and 95% of Adobe RGB. Number two, it has better contrast ratio in general than IPS. And number three, and I think this is the most important, it does not suffer from viewing angles, meaning that I don't really need to adjust it so much. I can have it flat on the desk and I can see it properly. When you're using an IPS panel for a pen display, the angle at which you are viewing it from will be very crucial, because seeing it from a different angle will also give you different colors and different luminosity. But with an OLED screen, that changes drastically because you can now use it from any angle that you want. In relation to that, another thing I appreciate, and again, it's because this is OLED, the maximum brightness is at 350 nits, as compared to other pen displays of this size that usually only go around 200 to 250 nits. So this can go brighter, it can give us better contrast, and of course better color accuracy as well. Now, I have not calibrated this on this computer, mainly because I've been using it on my laptop, and on my laptop I care more about the main display in terms of color. But I will include the more technical specs and the Delta E ratings on the article that I will post on Fstoppers, which is probably already out if you're watching this video. Now, in terms of use, earlier on I did drop the P word. This is why I think, at least for me, this is perfect. Number one, I really like the size. I like the 13.3-inch size. This is the kind of size I like working with in terms of pen displays. Why? Because whenever I'm using bigger ones, especially anything beyond 20 inches, I feel like I have to move around so much. Again, I'm not a digital illustrator. I am a photographer. So what I use this for would mainly be for creating composites and at the same time doing some retouching. The second thing I really like about this would be everything about the screen. I've already talked to you about the brightness, the viewing angles, the fact that it's OLED, and the implications of that in terms of color. At the same time, it's also multi-touch. It is actually a 10-point touch display, so I can use all my fingers to navigate the screen. So apologies for the change in framing. This little camera fell 6 feet from the ground, so I had to change that. Anyway, 10-point touch. Technically, I can use all of my fingers for inputs, but of course, this is best used with this pen. Now, I usually use my pen tablets and pen display for retouching my architecture and interiors work, but I felt like I wanted to change things up. So this is a seascape shot that I took about a year ago. And well, there's not really much to do, but just remove some distractions that I want to take out. So what I'll do is use the remove tool conveniently just by pressing the pen shortcut and adjust the brush size. And basically anything bright in the corners I like taking out, just so I have a more cohesive visual flow. I consider anything that's dangling in terms of context in the edges or the corners of the frame. It might give a bit of an impression that, you know, the visual design wasn't intentional, or ultimately it's just gonna look really distracting. Now, this is a slow shutter shot to get the waves, but I don't like the ripples of the water here. Hopefully the remove tool will just flatten that out. And yeah, basically what I do here is just remove anything that looks like dust or dirt. And that doesn't directly have to be something that's actual dust or dirt, but anything that can be distracting, looks like it wasn't intentionally there. That might be some smudges on the lens, or that could be just a texture that comes out from the slow shutter, or even just something very reflective on the surface. Now, ultimately, what I really like about the Wacom Movink 13 is not a specific feature, but the combination of features. Again, I like the size. I think the resolution is enough for its size. I love the fact that it's OLED. Because of that, it's more versatile in terms of the viewing angles, the working angles rather. The fact that it's OLED also has implications about the color, the contrast, and the maximum brightness. The fact that it can do 350 nits is a really huge thing for me. It doesn't have buttons, but I never felt the need to use an external remote or a shortcut remote key, whatever. It just makes sense that you can pull out some on-screen shortcuts. That is, of course, thanks to the fact that it is touchscreen. The 10-point touch is a nice touch, if you get what I'm saying. But also I really like the fact that you can easily turn the touch functions on and off, because sometimes you'd only want the input from the pen. The on-screen shortcuts don't really need your fingers, but can also take inputs from the pen. So if you want to just rest your hand on the surface, you don't need to worry about accidental input, because you can turn off the touchscreen and you can pull up the on-screen shortcuts just as you would and use the pen to select them. Heck, if you feel like it, you can actually do your editing like this with the whole pen display resting on your hand and the other hand, of course, using the pen. And there we go. This is again the Wacom Movink 13. Currently, as of March 2025, in my opinion, this is the best pen display we have in the market. I am curious whether Wacom will also release bigger versions of this, because I'm pretty sure a lot of users of pen displays will also want it on bigger screens and bigger displays. But yes, this is the Wacom Movink 13. If you have any questions about it, do leave them down below in the comment section. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Nico Valenzuela. I'm a landscape and architectural photographer. And in this channel, I talk a lot about gear and tech that I use for all kinds of photography and content creation that I do. If you're into any of that, then do click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. In any case, I'm gonna have to check on the camera that fell to the ground. Thanks for watching.